computer. Why this right Wednesday Bible class? Right. See we go through. What is the password gospel? Why this thing doesn't save the password one time? What's the password for again, Jesse? Computer. Why this right Wednesday?
The Book of Ruth. It's a brilliant work of theological art, and it invites us to reflect on the question of how God is involved in the day-to-day joys and hardships of our lives. There are three main characters in the book: Naomi, the widow, Ruth, the Moabite, and Boaz, the Israelite farmer. And their story is told in 4 chapters that are beautifully designed. Let's just dive in and see how this all unfolds. Chapter 1 opens with this line: "In the days when the judges ruled." And it reminds us of the very dark and difficult days from the book of Judges. And here we meet an Israelite family in Bethlehem, struggling to survive through a famine. And so, in search of food, they move on to the land of Moab, Israel's ancient enemy. And there the father of the family dies, and the sons marry 2 Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. And then the sons, they die too. And so they leave only Naomi and these new daughters-in-law. And so Naomi, she has no reason to stay anymore. And so she tells her new daughters-in-law that she's moving back home. And Naomi, she knows that the life of an unmarried foreign widow in Israel is going to be very hard. And so she compels women to stay behind. Orpah agrees, but Ruth does not. She shows remarkable loyalty to Naomi, and she says, "Wherever you go, I'm going to go. Your people will become my people, and your God will become my God." And so the two of them return to Israel together. And the chapter concludes with Naomi changing her name to Mara, which means bitter in Hebrew, and she laments her tragic fate. Chapter 2 begins with Naomi and Ruth discussing where they're going to find food. And it just so happens to be the beginning of the barley harvest. And so Ruth goes out to look for food, and it just so happens that she ends up picking grain in the field of a man named Boaz, who just so happens to be Naomi's relative. We're told that Boaz is a man of noble character, and he notices Ruth. And so after finding out more about her story, he shows remarkable generosity to her. He makes these special provisions so that the immigrant Ruth can gather grain in his field. And in doing so, Boaz is actually obeying an explicit command of the Torah to show generosity to the immigrant and the poor. Boaz is so impressed by Ruth's loyalty to Naomi. He prays for her that God will reward her for her boldness. So Ruth comes home that day, and Naomi finds out that she met Boaz, and she is thrilled. She says Boaz is their family redeemer. Now, this family redeemer thing, this was a cultural practice in Israel where if a man in the family died and he left behind a wife or children or land, it was the family redeemer's responsibility to marry that widow, to take up the land and protect that family. So Naomi, she begins to hope that perhaps there might still be a future for her family. Chapter 3 begins with Naomi and Ruth making a plan to get Boaz to notice their situation. So Ruth is going to stop wearing clothes of a grieving widow, and she's going to show signs that she's available to be married. And so Ruth goes to meet Boaz on the farm that night. And as she approaches, Boaz wakes up and he's totally startled. And Ruth makes her intentions very clear. She asks if Boaz will redeem Naomi's family and marry her. Boaz is once again amazed by Ruth's loyalty to Naomi and her family, and he calls Ruth a woman of noble character. It's the same term used to describe the woman of Proverbs 31. So Boaz tells Ruth to wait until the next day, and he will redeem both Ruth and Naomi legally before the town elders. And so the chapter ends with Ruth returning to Naomi, and they marvel together at all of these recent events. In chapter 4,
Yeah, that was just a preview of the video before the session started. So don't worry, it was intentionally cut off there, but we'll see the rest as we go into this evening's session. Hello?
Yeah, again, feedback. So I think
No problem, sir. So I do wish everyone a wonderful Wednesday evening.
hello. Yeah, me now?
Yeah, and you know, but you still have two devices connected to audio, so you may need to disconnect audio from one device to continue.
All right.
No problem. Six, fifth, eight. Again, for those who are on, even on YouTube, feel free to check the Arima Church of Christ website. That's www.arima-christ.com/Wednesday-Bible-class-Ruth. Or even when you go to the website, you'll see in the right-hand side, you'll see the link to access the resources. So it is 7 p.m. and I want to welcome everyone who's on tonight, whether it's on Zoom or YouTube, for taking the time out to join our session this evening. I do pray that we'll have a wonderful session. I look forward to sharing and learning with everyone this evening. So please join with me as we begin in a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we come before you, thanking you for life, health, strength, and all your blessings and mercy throughout the day, Father. Father, we ask for your continued protection, your healing, your strength, your comfort, and we pray for your wisdom and spirit of understanding as we explore your scriptures and learn and grow from it, especially throughout these times of adversity and uncertainty, Father. Please bless us and be with us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So this evening, I'm going to start the session by doing a quick review of the last two sessions. So we are at the midway point of our Bible session for the month of June, where we are exploring the book of Ruth, looking at God being our Redeemer in times of adversity. I'm going to share a brief video from YouTube. So it's from the Bible Project channel. They have a lot of wonderful videos and resources. Even the website, you can check bibleproject.com and you'll be able to get a lot of lovely resources from that website. So let's view the first part of this video.
The Book of Ruth. It's a brilliant work of theological art, and it invites us to reflect on the question of how God is involved in the day-to-day joys and hardships of our lives. There are three main characters in the book: Naomi the widow, Ruth the Moabite, and Boaz the Israelite farmer. And their story is told in 4 chapters that are beautifully designed. Let's just dive in and see how this all unfolds. Chapter 1 opens with this line: "In the days when the judges ruled." And it reminds us of the very dark and difficult days from the book of Judges. And here we meet an Israelite family in Bethlehem, struggling to survive through a famine. And so, in search of food, they move on to the land of Moab, Israel's ancient enemy. And there the father of the family dies, and the sons marry 2 Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. And then the sons, they die too. And so they leave only Naomi and these new daughters-in-law. And so Naomi, she has no reason to stay anymore. And so she tells her new daughters-in-law that she's moving back home. And Naomi, she knows that the life of an unmarried foreign widow in Israel is going to be very hard. And so she compels the women to stay behind. Orpah agrees, but Ruth does not. She shows remarkable loyalty to Naomi, and she says, "Wherever you go, I'm going to go. Your people will become my people, and your God will become my God." And so the two of them return to Israel together. And the chapter concludes with Naomi changing her name to Mara, which means bitter in Hebrew, and she laments her tragic fate. Chapter 2 begins with Naomi and Ruth discussing where they're going to find food. And it just so happens to be the beginning of the barley harvest. And so Ruth goes out to look for food, and it just so happens that she ends up picking grain in the field of a man named Boaz, who just so happens to be Naomi's relative. We're told that Boaz is a man of noble character, and he notices Ruth. And so after finding out more about her story, he shows remarkable generosity to her. He makes these special provisions so that the immigrant Ruth can gather grain in his field. And in doing so, Boaz is actually obeying an explicit command of the Torah to show generosity to the immigrant and the poor. Boaz is so impressed by Ruth's loyalty to Naomi. He prays for her, that God will reward her for her boldness. So Ruth comes home that day, and Naomi finds out that she met Boaz, and she is thrilled. She says Boaz is their family redeemer. Now, this family redeemer thing, this was a cultural practice in Israel where if a man in the family died and he left behind a wife or children or land, it was the family redeemer's responsibility to marry that widow, to take up the land and protect that family. So Naomi, she begins to hope that perhaps there might still be a future for her family. Chapter 3 begins with Naomi and Ruth making a plan to get Boaz to notice their situation. So Ruth is going to stop wearing clothes of a grieving widow, and she's going to show signs that she's available to be married. And so Ruth goes to meet Boaz on the farm that night. And as she approaches, Boaz wakes up and he's totally startled. And Ruth makes her intentions very clear. She asks if Boaz will redeem Naomi's family and marry her. Boaz is once again amazed by Ruth's loyalty to Naomi and her family, and he calls Ruth a woman of noble character. It's the same term used to describe the woman of Proverbs 31. So Boaz tells Ruth to wait until the next day, and he will redeem both Ruth and Naomi legally before the town elders. And so the chapter ends with Ruth returning to Naomi, and they marvel together at all of these recent events. In chapter
Right, so we have a very nice summary of chapters 1 and 2 in that video that was played there, and it even delved into chapter 3 as well. And the focus tonight will be, of course, on chapter 3. But I wanted us to look at chapter 1 and 2 to see where we were and where we are right now in the story. Now, for those who are on Zoom, just going to do some quick revision, nothing hard at all. Just going to launch some polls. I want to get your feedback on what we've learned so far. So in terms of true or false answer, so for those who are on YouTube, you could also send your feedback on the chat itself. I'm going to launch a poll. So those who are on YouTube, you should be able to see that poll coming up on your screen, and you should be able to answer. And it's some simple true or false questions. So for those on YouTube, for your information, The first question is true or false? Both Ruth and Orpah returned to Bethlehem with Naomi. So feel free to send your responses in the YouTube chat. True or false? Both Ruth and Orpah returned to Bethlehem with Naomi. The second true or false question is, and I'll show it on the screen for those on YouTube. The second true or false question is, Ruth showed initiative by offering to glean grain. So on YouTube, feel free to give your true or false. So you can see what some persons have already put. The third true or false question is that Boaz married Naomi so that he could also marry Ruth. So true or false? Boaz married Naomi so that he could also marry Ruth. I'm seeing on YouTube, you won't be able to see not going to see the question. So let's listen up, true or false? True or false? Did Boaz marry Naomi so that he could also marry Ruth? True or false? The fourth one is that Boaz arrived from Moab to check on the reapers. So true or false? Did Boaz come from Moab, that's in chapter 2, to check on the reapers? The fifth true or false is, did Elimelech have 2 sons? True or false? Did Elimelech have 2 sons? And that's in chapter 1. And the sixth true or false is that Bethlehem, so the name Bethlehem, or the town of Bethlehem, is often referred to as the house of bread. So that's the sixth true or false question. So it's just to do a little trivia to see if we remembered what we explored in the first 2 sessions. So the first true or false question for those on YouTube, both Ruth and Orpah returned to Bethlehem with Naomi. True or false? Ruth and Orpah returned to Bethlehem with Naomi. True or false? The second question is that Ruth showed initiative by offering to glean grain. True or false? Did Ruth show initiative by offering to glean grain? The third one is that Boaz married Naomi so that he could also marry Ruth. I see someone answered on YouTube there. So number 3, the question is true or false? Did Boaz marry Naomi so that he could also marry Ruth? The fourth question is that did Boaz arrive from Moab to check on the reapers? Did Boaz come from Moab to check on the reapers? That's chapter 2. The fifth question is, did Elimelech have 2 sons? Did Elimelech have 2 sons? And the sixth question is, Bethlehem was often referred to as the house of bread. Is that true or false? I'm going to end the poll for those on Zoom. I'm going to share the results on the screen. So for the first question is, did both Ruth and Orpah return to Bethlehem with Naomi? And 100% of the persons who answered number 1, and on YouTube I'm seeing, was false, and that is totally correct. Ruth and Naomi returned to Bethlehem, not Ruth, Naomi, and Orpah. So that's excellent. For number 2, did Ruth show initiative by offering to glean grain, and that is totally correct. 100% persons who answered number 2 got it correct. Number 3, Boaz married Naomi so that he could also marry Ruth. And so far we haven't reached the marriage, but we see everyone so far on YouTube as well answered to number 3 false, which is correct. I'm a very attentive and intelligent class here this evening. The fourth one is that Boaz arrived from Moab to check on the reapers. So we have on Zoom, half of the person said true and half said false. And the correct answer is false. He did not come from Moab. He actually came from Bethlehem to check on the reapers themselves. So number 4, the answer is false. Boaz did not come from Moab to check on the reapers. Number 5 is, did Elimelech have 2 sons? And 100% on YouTube who answered and on Zoom did put true, which is correct. And finally, Bethlehem was often referred to as a house of bread. 83% on Zoom said true, 17% said false. Correct answer is true. Was referred to commonly as the house of bread. So it was just a short review, some true and false. I have another poll coming up, so don't worry, don't feel bad if you didn't get to answer questions in this one. My YouTube friends, don't worry, we'll figure out a way to get you involved in the poll, hopefully by the next session, so that you can also answer. And maybe, just maybe, the next session, we may have fantastic prizes. Some may be virtual, some may be physical, but time will tell. So we look forward to that in our next session. So let's dive straight in. But before we dive in, I'd just like to get any feedback or comments from anyone on what they have learned so far from the first two chapters. And if you have read ahead, because the material was posted earlier today, if you have read ahead, anything that you think stood out to you so far in chapter 3 from your study of Ruth. And on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment as well if you do have any thoughts or feedback. So feel free, anyone so far, what stood out to you so far in the story? So we are at the halfway point. We finished 2 out of the 4 chapters. Feel free to share. All right, well, no problem. Hello?
Okay, no. Sister Carol wanted to ask a question, not make a comment.
No problem.
Again.
Please go ahead. Yeah, I'm hearing you.
My comment is that when they said that Boaz knew about Ruth, her personality, I was wondering if he knew about it before she actually came to his area, before she started to glean, and because they said, she was a virtuous woman. But how did he know about her personality before she actually came there?
Interesting thought. Thank you for sharing, Sister Carol. We see in chapter 2 when he spoke with her, he said that he heard about how much she has done for her mother-in-law. And we could derive from that Bethlehem was not a very large town.
Okay.
But when they came and the people, obviously, Naomi would come with some foreign woman. They found out that this foreign woman was married to one of her sons. His sons died, and the foreign woman decided to leave her gods and her people to come with Naomi. And then she even risked her life to go out and glean. So we can pull from the passages, especially in chapter 2, that people would have been speaking, because of course they may have been watching this foreigner coming here. They're probably looking to see if she would be like the typical Moabite, because we know the Israelites and the Moabites, even though they were related through Lot and Abraham, they did not have a very good relationship. In fact, the Israelites were warned not to allow their children to marry the Moabites. And also the Moabites were not even allowed in the assembly up to the 10th generation. So we can see that it would have been something that was shocking to the tongue that Naomi brought this Moabite. And then when they looked at her, they would see, oh, she's not like the rest of them.
The rest of the people.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means he heard.
He heard. So people
so good
talk.
News, good, yes. Yeah, people talk, yes. And even about us now, in our lives now, people talk about other people, so it's a fact. Okay, then. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for sharing. Guys, so someone else was also trying to unmute at the time.
Jesse, my comment was in relation to how we deal with the adversity. I think our sister Debbie had shared something in our ladies group about Ruth, where she did not sit down and wait to be fed. She actually got up and tried to get work or to gather food. Let me just say, because there was no payment. Your payment was what you gleaned from the ground.
Yep.
And you read it, and I'm saying she's gleaning, but I didn't think about it in that aspect. Remember, the topic is how we dealing with adversity.
Yeah.
So as we go through this time, because that's how you started the class, how we are dealing with different situations and how it affects us, that we have to get up. Don't just sit down and say, the Lord will provide and he will send manna from heaven. That's not what he wanted us to do. He wanted us to use our initiative in getting things done. And I thought that was an interesting point. I didn't look at it like that, but I thought that was something that we could share. No, Sister Debbie is on, so she may want to add some more to that comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for sharing. And actually, it is in line with what we touched on last week, in the fact that we saw how Ruth took that initiative. She was a foreigner, she was poor, she was a widow, so she was the most vulnerable in society. And she was in probably the worst situation you could be in that she didn't have any possible source of income. Nobody would really be there to look out for her because, as we know, the relationship with the Moabites and the Israelites. And you're quite right in that she took initiative. And I like the idea of the manner that you raised there. And even in the book of Joshua, we saw that from the moment that the children of Israel ate, crossed the Jordan and ate from the fruit of the land, manna stopped showing up for them. There was no more manna. And it shows, as you implied there, that God wants us to also work for ourselves. He is a gracious father, a loving father, but as any good parent would know that you can't spoon feed the children forever. So God would have made provisions for the Israelites while they were wandering the desert and wilderness by providing manna. But as soon as they were able to provide for themselves, He stopped that manna from coming. And during the times of adversity, as you rightfully shared, and as Sister Debbie shared, as you said, it is upon us as well to have the proper mindset to take that initiative as well. And that's as we move into session 3, you can see that there were 3 things that Ruth did so far in the first 2 chapters. The first thing, as I said, she took initiative. She did not wait for Naomi to tell her to go and glean grain because Naomi was the older woman. She may have been more fragile, and she had all right to instruct Ruth to, go and find something for us to eat. But we see in chapter 2, it was Ruth who actually asked Naomi for permission to glean in the fields. Ruth also persevered diligently. In chapter 2, we saw that she worked till evening. She took a little rest. She ate, of course, but she worked till evening and was able to get at least a week's supply of barley. And then the third thing we saw that she did during a time of adversity, she shared her blessings. She carried back home the leftovers from lunch to share with Naomi. And she also shared the good news about God's favor that was extended through Boaz. And the encouragement is there for us as well. During times of adversity, we too, like Ruth, will experience God intervention and favor. And sometimes it may be in ways that we don't even recognize, because we saw in Ruth chapter 2 that she did not know anyone there. She was a foreigner, a stranger. It's not like today where you would have had signs on the different plots of land saying, this is the Smith's property, this is the Boaz property, and you have the fences, and you can easily see, okay, this is the property of this owner. No, she was as a foreigner, may not have known whose field that she was going in. She asked Naomi's permission to go to glean, and she said, maybe I will find favor with someone. And she happened, as the scriptures say, she happened to glean in Boaz's field. But we know that happening is really God's providence. And similarly, when we take initiative, opportunities will happen to open up for us. We can also see where Boaz heard about Ruth. and recognize her, not just physically, but recognize her character. And in the same manner, others will hear about our character and devotion to God as we take initiative, as we persevere. Boaz invited Ruth to glean in his field only. And we too will get that favor through business opportunities, through charitable donations. We will find during our times of adversity, when we take initiative and we persevere, that we will get that favor from people. It may not even be in ways that we imagined or could even think of, but God will extend his favor through people. He will use people who we may not even know, to extend that favor to us, to extend that protection and to provide sustenance for us. So we saw the story building up in Ruth chapters 1 and 2, where the first chapter introduced us to the characters, it introduced us to the situation. There was the drama, as you may call it, in the story, the loss, the heartbreak, Naomi wanting to be called Mara or bitter. And then in chapter 2, we see some glimmer of hope in Ruth being able to get food and sustenance and the favor of Boaz. Now, as we go into chapter 3, it's the shortest chapter in the book. It's 18 verses, but there's a lot of juicy information, if I can call it that, in chapter 3. Because at the beginning of... Hello,
Brother
sure.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Sister Mendoza just wanted me to tell you. She just called me and told me to tell you, because she cannot think the chat. She wanted you to remember that Boaz acknowledged all the work and the worth of his gleaners, because of the manner in which he greeted them and stuff. So sometimes as business people, we tend to be holding our head up and not showing respect to our workers. So she wanted us to acknowledge that as a businessman, he still showed respect. They were beneath him, they were working for him, but he still showed them respect by the way how he greeted them. Okay, and he was grateful for them.
Amen. And she is correct. She is correct in the way that he is introduced, as we saw in the second session, where he provided a good example for us as Christian employers, Christian business workers, even supervisors, of how we are to deal with each other, even those who are reporting to us in an equitable and loving manner. So that is correct. So I hope she gets the message. That
she's listening on YouTube.
On YouTube, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay.
Right, so when we go back to chapter 3, in the first few verses of chapter 3, that's verses 1 to 5.
Darcy?
Hi.
But yes, hi, but Darcy. Well, Sister Claudia was making a point where I sent something on the chat.
Right.
But what I wanted to say, remember what I was really stating is that was the law of Moses, whereby those people who reap whatever drops off, the poor will get it. It was a law in Leviticus 23 and 22, right? And I was just making the statement because some people, we consider poor, depend on a lot of handouts. But I was just looking at it, well, Ruth was poor, but yet she went to that field and look at the hours from morning till evening.
Really?
And some of us really look out like the government should provide and this should come, instead of we try, even the poor had to look for the needs. So, so I saw it as relevant because a lot of us sit back and look for handouts instead of, find work. There is so many things, even if you don't have a job, you still could do, to earn. And I was just admiring Ruth here, how she took the law seriously and went out there from morning till night to work to find meals for she and Naomi. That was just the point.
And thank you very much for sharing, Sister Debbie. I totally agree with you that even though the provisions were there for those who are vulnerable in society to receive that form of charity, it still requires that initiative, that going out there, that working. And I think in one of the discussion questions, I had put in terms of the application question in session 2, do you agree with the saying that God works when we do? And it's a saying that God works when we do. He is waiting for us to show our faith by our works, and He puts the rest. So we give our best, and God puts the rest. And so true. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah.
So even on top of that point in chapter 3, we see where Naomi is advising Ruth to even take further initiative, to even go further, because while they may have gotten enough barley for that week from root gleaning, Naomi is looking at the bigger picture. She wants the best for her daughter-in-law. She does not want her to have to live that life where she's gleaning constantly and has to go through that work. She wants that rest, if we may call it, for Ruth. And she encourages Ruth, that's Naomi, to glean in Boaz's field. And then she advises her on how to secure a long-term future, because she tells Ruth about the principle of the near redeemer. Now, we don't know if the property and all of those things would have passed to Mahlon or Killian when Naomi's husband died, but technically the redemption right would have fallen to Naomi, because she was the next of kin. But she, in fact, forfeits her right to be redeemed and instead advises Ruth on how she could be redeemed. So she instructs her to do certain things, and she tells her to, wash herself, anoint herself, to change her garments, and to go to the threshing floor. You see, she knows that Ruth has to present herself in a certain way to approach the Redeemer. And one of the key things here in these first few verses that I'd like us to, highlight and make careful note of is that there was a relationship of respect between Ruth and Naomi. Naomi, as the more mature one in the relationship, one who may have had more knowledge about the laws and culture of Israel, she gave Ruth loving motherly advice. She was there looking out for her best interests. And Ruth, on the other hand, she also was going through a time of adversity, a time of struggles, but she submitted to the advice of Naomi. You see, Ruth and Naomi gives us the example of how the younger and more mature Christians are to work together in the church, especially during times of adversity, when everyone may be looking out for themselves, be looking out for their best interests, or may think that they know what is best. Ruth submitting to Naomi shows that she respected her experience, her maturity, and wisdom. And Naomi, on the other part, she showed the care and love as a mother would for a daughter. And this is vital throughout times of adversity for us to love, support, respect, encourage, and protect each other. Brother Wayne, I see your hand up. Feel free to unmute and share your comments.
Yes, Josh, I was saying that only happened because of the close relationship between Ruth and Naomi. So in order for Christians, or mature Christians to have a relationship, to give advice, and the young want to take advice, they must have that closeness, that relationship. Because Ruth and Naomi are mother, daughter, although they were not physically, biologically mother and daughter, they had that bond, mother and daughter bond. And as Christian, as older women in the church, they also have that bond with the younger women. So when they face adversity, they will not only give advice, but the younger will take advice from them. But if you don't have that relationship, the advice would not be sought and advice would not be taken.
And that is totally on the mark. Thank you for sharing, Brother Wayne. And those bonds aren't built overnight. relationships don't just happen in a day, it happens daily with a lot of work, a lot of effort, sometimes heartbreak, disappointments. But the advantage, as we see in chapter 3, the first 5 verses, is that it reaps the right fruit, especially when it's needed. Without Naomi's advice, Ruth may not have known what she would be able to do to get that rest that Naomi had in mind for her. Ruth may have continued, working hard, gathering the grain, gleaning till the end of the harvest. But Naomi saw something better for her. As a mother, she looked out for the best interest of her daughter. And yes, they were not biologically related, but that bond and that love was there. And the encouragement for all of us tonight is to build similar bonds. In this example, we see an older woman and a younger woman, but the bond could be with a younger man and an older man, a younger woman and an older man, a younger man and an older woman, because it's all a bond of Christian love and fellowship. And these bonds so vital during the time of adversity, because without those bonds, without that relationship, it's a bit more difficult for us to know when somebody is really in need. Though we sometimes expect others to know that we are in need or that we need assistance. But if we don't have that bond, if we don't reach out to others, if we don't have that relationship with others, it's very difficult for them to even perceive or even lend some form of assistance, even if it is just a listening ear. So we see the importance of that bond and that relationship between Ruth and Naomi. So Ruth follows the advice of Naomi. She listens to her. When Naomi tells her in verse 3, in chapter 3, she says, wash yourself and anoint yourself, put on your best garment and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. And in verse 4, she says, then it shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies, go in, uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do. Now, at that time, in the harvest time, the men of the village, as you may see on your screen here, they would take turns on the threshing floor. And they would, beat out the sheaves and let the breeze blow off the chaff and keep the good grain. Now, it's very tedious work. They would do it in the evening when the wind was very strong. And most times they would sleep there to protect the harvest, protect what they had. Of course, we saw, they may have eaten and drunken, to pass the time and also refresh themselves. So Naomi knew the custom. She knew what was expected. So she advised Ruth to go down there, make yourself presentable, and to lay at Boaz's feet. Now we see here, it's a very weird thing she tells her to do, to uncover his feet and to lie down at his feet. Very well. Does anyone have any thoughts on this advice on covering his feet and lying down at the base of his feet while he sleeps? So what do you think that signifies?
That she want to get married?
I didn't hear you clearly, Stephen.
I think it was to show interest in marriage.
To show interest in marriage, okay. Brother Wayne?
I think she's being subservient to him. Being subservient.
Submission to him.
Yeah.
And
I think she didn't want to be too forthright to say as a woman, so she went by his feet.
Right, thank you. So I like the feedback, and all of them carry a similar theme, because at that time, now the modern day reader of the Bible may not understand the custom or even agree with it. Sister Angela, I think I'm hearing you trying to share. Yeah, feel free to go ahead.
Good night, everyone. My thought is yes, I say it was concerning marriage as well, because this is what she explained to her, to uncover the feet and to lie down there. And when the time is right, he will tell her what to do. Right?
Yeah.
And then if we follow into the verse, into the scripture, that is exactly what it leads to. Right? Because of the different the responsibility when he wake up and he see her, right? And he told her, well, okay, this is what I think, but do not remain, right? Do not let anyone see you here at this
Right.
time. So you can leave and we will talk later. You understand?
Yeah.
And when we look at the verse of it, right? It was exactly lead to that. Right? But as you know, tell her, just trust me. Just trust
Yeah.
me. Do as I say, and you will see. Yeah, you'll see the outcome of it. Right? And she did see the outcome.
Yeah.
It was exactly wonderful. So that's exactly what the meaning for it. Sort of like a choice then. I make a good choice to you. This is a good person for you.
Right.
You understand?
And thank you for sharing. So everyone is on point, exactly on point. As you rightfully said, Sister Angela, Stephen, Sister Carol, Brother Wayne. It was all about signaling her intention for marriage, her intention to be submissive to Boaz as her husband, to trust him as her husband and the one who would care for and take care of her. Now, the culture may seem weird or different to us, but we must understand the context of what we're reading in the Bible, and not just for the book of Ruth, but any book in the Bible. It's important to understand the context of when it was being written, the audience and the characters themselves. Yes, Sister Claudia, I see your hand up. Okay, go ahead.
One of the things I was looking at, you know, there was a custom, it happened with another character in the Old Testament where they uncovered your nakedness. And I was wondering, because that's how I looked at it. When
Okay.
you put, if I could reach to uncover your foot, it means I'm very, very close to you, right? And she didn't do anything else to say that she went and lie down with him. But
Right.
it is, I was looking at it as a woman, not just signaling her intention, but showing him, look how close I am. So if you had really done something, if I cry rape, everybody will say, well, but look where she is. It's
Yeah.
possible. You understand? So that's what I was looking. I'm trying to remember. There's lots, two daughters where they uncovered his nakedness. And
Well, I know is it Shem earlier on with the uncovering nakedness,
Not
Noah's
Shem.
son.
Ham.
Ham, right. Yeah, uncovering
okay.
naked. It was a more shameful thing because you know he wasn't supposed to really look upon his father's nakedness. But I think I understand the point you're making there, that she uncovering his foot would show that just as Saul and David in the cave, where David was able to cut off a piece of his robe and show him after, look, Saul, you're chasing me, but I had the opportunity to do you harm, and I did not. And she, being at his feet, uncovering his feet, showed that when he woke up, well, what is she doing there? She could have done anything to him at that point while he was sleeping. Is that the theme that you get over there? And she's showing him that
she could have done anything.
she didn't mean him any harm. She was there not for a reason that was sinister, but something that was virtuous as well. And as you rightfully said, she did not lie with him. She lay at his feet. So, and that's an excellent view there. Something that most times we could skip over as well. Very simply. Thank you very much for sharing that. So Ruth showed Boaz a number of things here that she was intention for marriage, because Naomi would have told her to present herself not as a poor widow, but she would have washed herself, anointed herself, and put on her best garment. So she was looking presentable, smelling presentable, she's smelling nice. She was at his feet, signaling that she was willing to submit to him. She was willing to allow him to be that protector and redeemer for her. And thirdly, as Sister Claudia just pointed out there, she also showed that she did not mean any ill intention. She did not lie with him or next to him or on top of him or even do him anything, but she lay at his feet. And we see in the chapter that when he woke up, he was startled. And he asked, "Who are you?" And she said, "Ruth, your maidservant," signaling again for willingness to submit. And when he saw that, he was totally impressed. You know, in verses 6 to 13, he blessed her. He praised her. He called her a virtuous woman, similar to the virtuous woman in Proverbs 31. He recognized that you have done such a great thing here, that the kindness that you are showing is even greater than the kindness that you have shown all along to Naomi, in that you have not gone after other men, whether older, younger, richer, or poorer. You have kept yourself, and you have shown that you are willing to do what is right in the right way, but not only for your redemption, but for the redemption of her mother-in-law. And Boaz, he did not try to take advantage of Ruth in any way, because, I mean, at the end of the day, in those times, Boaz was a rich landowner. Ruth was a poor foreign widow. If anything were to occur, it would obviously be his word against hers, but he did not take advantage of her. In fact, he was totally honest with her, in that he knew that he was able to fulfill the practice of being a near redeemer or kinsman redeemer to Naomi and Ruth, but he did not give them false hope. He let Ruth know that there was a closer relative, which according to the practice, it was the closest relative, was the one who could redeem the property. So just on a side note, in the book of Leviticus, there were provisions in circumstances where someone is either poor or they died, and the land is either sold due to poverty or debt or mortgage to someone else, and there is a provision for a relative or the closest relative to purchase that property. Now, there's another thing that's also mixed up. We'll see in chapter 4 with the levirate marriage, where, you know, the name of the person is carried on through marriage, but we'll see that in chapter 4. We're dealing with the redemption of the property itself. So Elimelech in chapter 1, when they moved to Moab, most likely they would have mortgaged their land and their property and moved to Moab when there was a famine in Bethlehem. Now that the famine was over and Naomi returned, she returned without Elimelech or Mahlon or Kilion. And in those times, the property rights would have passed on through the males. The males were the heirs. So there was no way for Naomi to get that property unless a near kinsman or a near relative was able to purchase that property back for them. And Boaz, as we saw in chapter 2, Naomi knew that Boaz was a relative of Elimelech. So she advised Ruth to go to him, to submit herself to him. And in doing so, she would be pleading, asking for Boaz to redeem Naomi, redeem her and Naomi. Now, Boaz, being a man of integrity and great character, shows that even though he could have lied to Ruth, he could have tried to go to bed with Ruth there and tell her, well, if you lay with me, I will redeem the property because I'm wealthy and I'm a relative. He could have even tried to bribe the person who owned the property, or even try to get the property by force. But Boaz was a man of character, of integrity, and he shows us that even though we may have opportunities to take shortcuts, even though we may have opportunities to take advantage of situations to circumvent the rules, despite the situation, we must still abide by the proper rules and principles. And we see that, as Sister Angela spoke about earlier, she kind of gave away some of it. Boaz was such a man of noble character that he didn't even want Ruth to leave there in questionable circumstances. He told her to stay until it is morning, and when it was just bright enough for her to be able to safely go back home, he sent her away and he provided her with sustenance as a gift for both Ruth and Naomi, because he did not want anyone to question her character. Obviously, people see Ruth, this foreign Moabite woman, leaving the threshing floor where Boaz was very early in the morning. They would question, they say something is going on there. But Boaz understood that it was vital not just to provide physically for Ruth by giving her the barley, but also to protect her reputation and her character because she was a virtuous woman. And it's a similar picture we see for husbands and wives with Jesus and the church, because Christ presented the church as his bride unto himself. You know, he washed her, anointed her, and ensured that she was presentable. And Boaz understood the importance of that. So we have just that small lesson there. We see Boaz showing his character, his integrity, and his willingness to ensure that Ruth's name was protected. Now, as we close off the chapter in verses 14 to 18, Boaz agrees to redeem Ruth and Naomi. Again, he was honest enough to let them know that he was a relative, but he was not the closest relative. So he will see to it that the matter is addressed. If the closer relative decides to redeem them, he can't do anything about it. He's not going to use his influence, his money, his might to circumvent the rules, to manipulate things. He's going to do it the proper way. However, if that other relative who is not named does not want to redeem Naomi and Ruth, Boaz is willing to redeem them. So he tells Ruth that, and he sends her away with a gift. So Ruth now, she returns to Naomi, as we saw in chapter 2 as well, and she reports to Naomi what happened. And again, we see a change in Naomi's mindset. You know, she moves from a mindset of bitterness. So it says bitters here. I'm not promoting Angostura, by the way. That's a typo. She moves from a mindset of bitterness. So in Ruth chapter 1, around verse 20, we see she was bitter. She wanted to be called Mara. In chapter 2, verse 19 to 20, she was elated to find out that Ruth was in Boaz's field gleaning and he showed her favor. So she started to have a mindset of blessedness. And now in Ruth chapter 3, around verse 18, when she gets the news, she has a mindset of belief. So she moved from bitterness to blessedness to belief. And that is the power of a testimony. That's the power of having that relationship with others where we share our faith with others. And Ruth sharing that message, sharing that good news is so powerful. It's such a powerful lesson for us that we must continue to share our faith, especially during the times of adversity. See, because Ruth sharing her faith strengthened Naomi. Naomi was so strengthened, you know, that she told Ruth, this man is going to see about this matter today. She didn't have anything to indicate that Boaz was going to deal with the situation today. Boaz did not speak with Naomi, but Naomi was so strengthened in her faith from Ruth's testimony that she had so much faith that she believed that the matter would be dealt with today. And she told Ruth, hold on, wait, sit still, and you'll see, just as Moses told the Israelites to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, Naomi told Ruth to sit still because the man will see about the issue today. And this could be the hardest part of the process during the adversity. Even though we take initiative, even though we are diligent, sometimes we still need to wait on the Lord. And the encouragement we could take from these verses is that we must sometimes sit still and wait on the Lord. Not sit still idly, so I'm not contradicting what we spoke about earlier, but there's a time, Ecclesiastes shows us there's a time to stand and a time to sit. There's sometimes throughout the times of adversity, there are times that even though we take initiative, even though we persevere diligently, there are times that we still need to wait things out. That there are times that God is going to work things out. COVID-19 has showed us that, because regardless of what we do, we try to do, it's just something that we have to wait out in some regard. Yes, Sister Claudia, I see your hand up.
Verse 14. And she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came into the flow. So I was saying they had to have traditional things where the men would, as you said, they finish for the night and they lie down and they sleep. So women weren't welcome in that role, right? So he didn't want somebody to sully her character in any way. You understand? So I was looking at this because when you go 13 and 14 explaining about the kinsman, but 14 is saying something different about her, the woman, her role in this place. She shouldn't be there at all.
No.
You understand? All right.
Thank you very much for sharing. Brother Wayne, I saw your hand up.
Yes, what I'm saying, and we could look for that and all. Boaz recognized she was a virtuous woman. She was a woman of virtue, and when that alone will put a distance between men coming at women in a slack manner or in an aggressive manner. Or we look at normal in this kind of attacking. When people realize you are a virtuous woman, they would not come around you with foolishness. And the way Ruth cry about herself, because the Bible, the verse that us in verse say, he recognizes a woman of virtue, a virtuous woman. So women need to know to cry about themselves. When they know to cry about themselves, they discourage men from coming and with slackness around you.
Thank you very much for sharing, Brother Wayne. I just want to go even further on the same point that, as Boaz showed as well too, that the men also have a responsibility to ensure that they also are men of integrity and treat women with the same honor. Because there's the two sides to the equation. Sometimes even though a woman may present herself a virtuous way, because of sometimes the unscrupulous nature of some men, they still try to go at them in a dishonorable way. So we have the two sides being shown here, that Ruth's character is shown to be virtuous, and that discourages any sort of untoward behavior toward her. And Boaz's character is also one of integrity, so that he also considers how it would look for Ruth to be there. He considers her own integrity, her own reputation, and ensures that she's not seen to be somebody who's slack or doing things that she isn't supposed to do. So as we conclude this evening, I saw a comment on YouTube there from Anastasia Cabrera. She was asking, what is the answer to discussion question 3? I'm not sure if it's in session 3, but if it is, the questions for discussion. So at the end of every participant guide session, guys, there are quiz questions, which is for your own knowledge and recollection and learning. And there are discussion questions that I do hope that you take the time to do. You can send me your answers. You can email me at jassyambrose@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to share and discuss with you. But the questions and the application section is really to help you in your own study and growth as well. And if you want to share in the class as well, that is okay as well. For discussion question number 3, Boaz instructed Ruth to remain until morning, then gave her a generous gift to carry home. How does his action show that he's willing to provide protection and sustenance for Ruth? And Sister Claudia touched on it a little while ago in that he ensured that when she left, she did not leave in a manner which will bring disrepute to her name, ensuring that, even though women generally weren't allowed on the threshing floor, it would look very untoward that this woman, this foreign woman, is there on the threshing floor with Boaz and leaving early in the morning. It would look very suspicious. And the key thing about the reputation and character, just as in Timothy and Titus, we are given the qualifications for elder, and one of the things is blameless. It doesn't mean that the person has no sin or they haven't done anything wrong or they don't make mistakes, but the blameless means that nothing untoward could be attached to their name. So even if somebody accuses, makes a false accusation, or says anything, because of that person's character and reputation, it's not going to stand because we know that that person stands for what is right. And Boaz, he provided protection for Ruth's name. He didn't want any such thing to be said about her, so he ensured that she left at the right time. And of course, he provided sustenance by giving her barley in her shawl to carry back home. So if it was in session 2, the discussion question number 3, so I'll go through it. From the scriptures, it appears as though Boaz has heard about Ruth and all that she has done for Naomi. Explain why you agree or disagree with the suggestion that he was testing Ruth's loyalty to Naomi by extending his kindness to her. So for me, if I were to answer this, he could have been testing Ruth by being kind to her in offering her to eat lunch with his workers. See, the reapers were the hired workers of the landowner. They would sit and eat together at the meal time and they would share a meal together. Ruth was a foreigner, a poor widow, a Moabite, even worse, and she was a gleaner. She did not necessarily have the same social standing as Boaz or his reapers, but he may have been testing her to see what she would do, to see her character, to see what she would do when invited and given that favor. If she would try to take advantage of his kindness, if she would probably try to steal something, what would she do when invited? Of course, we know that was not his intention. He genuinely had a care for her, but it could have been a test, even to see if she would waste the food when given it. But we saw in Ruth chapter 2 that Ruth was very prudent. She ate as much as she needed to be filled, and she kept back her leftovers to carry home to share with Naomi. And I'm sure Boaz would have seen that she kept back those leftovers. It didn't seem as though she was greedy and she took extra. I don't know about you, but sometimes in work, lunches or other events, see people carrying home carloads of food from the event, and it doesn't seem that's what Ruth did. She carried home the extras from her portion. So Boaz would have noticed all of this and would have seen that she's not wasteful, she's not greedy, she's not covetous, but she is prudent in the way in which she manages herself. So I hope that answered your question, Sister Anastasia. And so before we close, I just want to open up the floor to any final thoughts or comments before we close. And if Brother Wayne would be so kind as to close us off in prayer after, I would be very appreciative of it. So are there any final comments or thoughts? All right, if not, Brother Wayne, would you be so kind as to close us off in a word of prayer, please?
Okay, let's pray. Father in heaven, Lord God Almighty, Father, indeed, we are privileged as your servants to come before your mighty throne of grace, God. We have that freedom, that blessings, oh God, Father. Jesus Christ has made possible, oh God, that we could come before your throne with boldness, oh God, Father. We give you thanks, oh God, for our spend our lives, our health, our strength, oh God, Father, giving us the physical things in this life, which make our life comfortable, oh God, Father. Most of all, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who died upon Calvary cross, whereby eternal life was made possible, oh God, Father. Father, we are thankful for this Bible class, oh God, Father, we could learn and apply those teachings in our lives, oh God, Father. Father, we thank you for Brother Jesse as he continues to study, that he could come to impart knowledge upon us, oh God, Father. We pray that your Holy Spirit will be upon him, oh God, and continue to study, oh God, Father. Bless him and his family, oh God, Father. For we pray as members of the body, oh God, we willing, oh God, Father, to accept your teachings, oh God, Father. And we apply your teachings in our lives, so we become stronger Christians, oh God, Father. We want to be in your words, oh God. We could go, dear Father, and we, the teacher, oh God, help us to take those life lessons from Ruth, oh God, Father. That her virtue, oh God, Father, Boaz, oh God, Father, his commitment to you, oh God, Father, that he would not sin against you, oh God, Father. Help us, oh God, have that same attitude, oh God, Father, that we will not impinge our character, oh God, Father. Help us, oh God, dismiss us as we might go to our separate ways, oh God, Father, but we united in prayer, united in love, oh God, Father. Be with us, guide us, oh God, protect us, oh God. This thing we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Brother Wayne. Thank you, everyone, for logging on. Please remember to keep each other in prayer, especially those who are grieving at this time, those who are ill. Please continue to lift up each other in prayer. And seeing a hand up there from Sister Carol Ambrose, feel free to unmute as we close off.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, I had to come in at this late stage. I was in and out. I can't help but reflect on something even from the last lesson, and you brought it out again today. About having a change in mindset, from the mindset of bitterness to blessedness because of Boaz, because of what he has done as the Redeemer.
Right.
Yes. And I can't help juxtaposing that with Christ our Redeemer. Jesus Christ is our Redeemer. And when we have been redeemed by Jesus, by the blood of the Lamb, we become transformed and we have a new mindset. So this is where I am seeing the connection between Boaz the Redeemer and Christ our Redeemer. Same effect.
Well, thank you very much for sharing, and you kind of jumped the gun for session 4, but thank you for the contributions. It will have us thinking for next week's session, God's Prayer Life. So again, everyone, thank you all for logging in. Please do have a wonderful evening. Please continue to keep safe and follow all health regulations and protocols, and continue to keep each other in prayer. May God bless you all. Have a blessed night.